Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your husband's conscious effort so that you can feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about why husbands watch porn. My guest, Erin, was incredibly lonely and couldn't get her husband's time, attention, and consideration. She lost all respect for him. Then she made some changes, and today he kisses her before leaving the house, tells her that he loves her, and wrote her a card for their anniversary. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. That's coming up. But first, let's talk about why husbands watch porn. When you discover that your husband watches porn, it can feel really bad, disrespectful even. Here you're his only partner in the bedroom, and he's watching other women do nasty things on his phone. It's so disappointing and so revolting. It can make you feel pretty unspecial knowing that your husband watches an endless parade of strange women on the internet. You wonder if he's even a decent, moral person. Maybe he's addicted to porn. And if he's watching porn but not having physical intimacy with you, then it could really feel like porn is stealing something precious from you. Maybe you've told him to stop and he only does it in secret now. That might strike terror into your heart. Maybe you wish you could just make him stop once and for all. If he does watch, then why? Why does he insist on doing something so trashy when he knows it hurts his wife? Especially if he said he'd stop or it's against his religion or his morals. I know for me, whenever I find myself trying to control something my husband does, it's because I'm telling myself that if only he would stop doing that thing, I could feel safe or happy or have peace of mind. But what really wreaks havoc on my peace of mind, trying to control something I can't control, like my husband, like whether he watches porn. I'm not saying porn is right or that it's okay, but I am saying I know I can't control what my husband watches, nor would I want to, not really. My husband is a man, and that's pretty different from being a woman and has a lot of aspects that I appreciate about it, like his utter devotion to making me happy, for example. Another aspect of being a man, from what I gather, is that porn is incredibly compelling for men. It doesn't make sense to my female brain, just like the whole concept of respect. You know, the real meaning of masculine respect seems elusive to me at times also. But one of the best explanations I've heard about the male compulsion towards porn was a very lighthearted but profound one from a comedy called Coupling that I saw in the UK. It was written by Steve Moffat. And the setting is a dinner party. And the setup is that there is evidence to implicate that the host of the dinner party, who is also named Steve, just like the writer, he was watching a porn film called Lesbian Spank Inferno. And this has come out in the conversation at the dinner party. One of the female dinner guests asks, "How could you possibly enjoy a film like that?" And Steve launches into this explanation. "Oh, because it's got naked women in it. Look, I like naked women. I'm a bloke. We're supposed to like naked women. We're born like that. We like naked women as soon as we're pulled out of one. Halfway down the birth canal, we're already enjoying the view. Look, it is the 4 pillars of the male heterosexual psyche. We like naked women, stockings, lesbians, and Sean Connery best as James Bond, because that's what being a boy is. Look, I want to spend the rest of my life with the woman at the end of this table there, but that does not stop me wanting to see several thousand more naked bottoms before I die, because that's what being a bloke is." When man invented fire, he didn't say, "Hey, let's cook." He said, "Great, now we can see naked bottoms in the dark." As soon as Caxton had invented the printing press, we were using it to make pictures of, hey, naked bottoms. we have turned the internet into an enormous international database of naked bottoms. So you see, the story of male achievement through the ages, feeble though it may have been, has been a story of our struggle to get a better look at your bottoms. Thank you, girls. I'm not sure how insulted you really ought to be. And that was Steve's explanation. And it may be small comfort when you're feeling scared or jealous that women on your husband's phone are turning his head. But it may give you some comfort to remember that while you can't control what he watches, you can celebrate that over all the other women on the planet, he chose you. He chose you to be his partner, to be his wife, maybe the mother of his children, the one he wanted to build a life with. You're there in his three-dimensional world, and no fleeting two-dimensional woman can compete with that. And while you might still wish he wouldn't go looking for other naked bottoms, it's nice to remember that your husband is made to be attracted to your naked bottom. It's part of the crazy, complex, wonderful system that brings couples together. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest, Erin, was incredibly lonely and couldn't get her husband's time or his attention and consideration. She lost all respect for him. Then she made some changes, and today he kisses her before leaving the house. He tells her that he loves her, and he wrote a card for their anniversary. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Erin, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. It's so great to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being able to share about my journey.
Well, I can't wait to hear the whole thing. So take us back to the bad old days. What was happening?
If I had to describe it, it would be just this incredible feeling of, I was scared. Because I had this feeling that I would describe as, I don't respect you, and by you, I mean my husband, anymore. And that terrified me. And I was so scared that I was talking to family members and friends and saying things like, I don't respect my husband, and really asking for help. And I really felt this fear that if I didn't respect my husband, then I wouldn't be able to make my marriage work.
Yeah, it sounds very scary. And I hear you were asking people for help, your circle. What did people say when you told them you didn't respect them?
People would justify their reasons for divorcing their spouse, or they would tell me that I should get a divorce, that was the solution, or that I should go to therapy. No one really had a solution for me. I think that was, that was really hard to just sit with that and to feel that I didn't have very many options.
Yeah, awful. And why did you feel like you couldn't respect him any longer?
Well, we had made so many big life decisions together. And he's so confident, and he just kind of plows into, like, from my perspective, he plows into these big life decisions with this gusto and this enthusiasm. And And I know that he puts a lot of thought into those decisions before he makes them. But for me, we would start, like, for example, we had moved in 2021, and my husband had started a business in 2020. And, it just felt like I had all of this fear, and I would tell him, like, hey, I've got all this fear about all of these things that we're doing and you're doing. and and he just kind of would look at me like, you're crazy. Like, I'm not scared. Why are you scared? Why should I be scared?
Yeah. So sounds like you didn't feel like he was really considering your feelings or how things were impacting you. And I'm guessing I've only heard a little bit of the story, but it sounds like maybe some of these things didn't go that smoothly, like the move or the new business and things like that, or
I would say that the business is very well thought through. It is very much my husband's baby. I have tried to stay like 100% off like of his paper. Like, I'm like, that is your business. I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. And I've tried to stay very positive in the department of, support for him. Like, I believe that he can do it. He's smart, he's capable. What I wasn't prepared for was maybe how stressed out he would show up in the world.
yeah.
And then on top of that, making a decision to move. And we didn't move for like financial reasons. We moved because he wanted to. And he wanted to buy the home he grew up in. And he loves this house. And I could see that delight. And like, there was part of me that was so supportive. And then another part of me that was like so angry.
Why were you so angry about that?
Because we've moved like 20 plus times. I've been married for 12 years, and we have moved so many times.
That's a lot of moving.
And
Moving's so stressful.
It is stressful. And every time we've moved, I've done the packing, like, of all the boxes and the stuff. And my husband has taken control of loading up the truck and the unloading. But it's so much work. And I just, like, if I could describe it, it's like I was excited about the idea, but the actual work that I did to get us into this home, like, I didn't want to do it.
No, I can see why you didn't. And you were really struggling to feel like you could get his attention and his affection also. Tell us about that.
I think for me, I want to verbally, like, I want him to tell me, like, hey, I appreciate you. And my husband he's not overly like vocal about his feelings. He's really uncomfortable to say things like that. And I just felt all of this resentment, like, hey, look at all of these things that I'm doing for you. I'm picking up my house and I'm moving my babies to another city. And I just it felt lonely. And it felt lonely too, because in the neighborhood we had lived next to some neighbors that had become some of my best friends. And the neighborhood we moved to, he gets to live by his best friends.
So you were making a big sacrifice. You did not want this move. This was not your desire.
Right. And at the same time, I have to tell myself, like, I said yes. Like, I said yes. Like, if that is what sparks joy in your heart, like, yes, let's do it. Let's move. And then I like simultaneously was like the world's biggest victim, right? Like,
I relate to that. Yeah. I said yes, but I meant no. I
Right.
meant I want to stay by my best friends and not have to pack this house up again, not move to the neighborhood by your best friends. So where I'll feel maybe even left out, possibly. I don't know. I'm making that up.
Honestly, his friends they have so much fun together. So it's fun to watch them. And it's fun because we all have kids about the same age. So that's fun to see too.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah. That's nice. Yeah.
but yeah, I really showed up in this neighborhood kicking and screaming.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. And so this is where things started coming to a head, it sounds like, after
Mhm.
you moved into this house. What happened?
Oh, um, oh man, everything because it was 2021. So I had actually been homeschooling my kids. My oldest was a kindergartner and I was working part-time, like super part-time, but like spending more time on it than I should have because it was like my escape, right? and and then we had moved and I just said I can't. Like I don't think I didn't say it out loud, but I just felt like I can't. I I don't want to make dinner. I don't want to clean my house. I want to go to work, come home, curl up on a ball, hang out on my couch, and do nothing. And that is what I did.
Wow. And it just really kind of reflects how hurt and how hopeless you were feeling, it sounds like. That's probably, I'm
Mhm.
guessing that's not how you wanted to live, really.
No, I mean, if I had to think about it, I would describe that time period as just like numb, like
Mm,
just like a
mm.
numbness. And one day, my little boy said to me, he said, "Mom, I love you to the moon and back." And that is a phrase from a book that we really cherish. And my husband was like, "Did you even notice? Did you even notice that he said that he loved you?" and um, I had, and it had meant so much to me. And there was just this anger of like, how dare you? How dare you judge my love for my children and for you, and see that it's not enough.
Oh, wow.
Um, and yeah, I mean, shortly after, there was just this moment where I told him, I said, I don't respect you anymore. And I saw the look on his face, like it was like I had kicked him. Like, like the look of just like wounded, like he was like a wounded dog. And I just I had no idea really that the respect was so important to him.
Mm.
Because I mean, I had basically not showed up to make dinner or or do the dishes. I mean, I quit doing everything. Um, but it was just when I said that, that was like, the straw that breaks the camel's back. Like he was he was so broken and I felt
Mm.
so bad.
Mm. Mm. And it's interesting because so and I don't know if you remember how you were feeling that day, but if someone had asked you, "Well, do you love your husband?" What do you think you would have said on the day you didn't respect him?
Absolutely.
Of course, I
I
love him,
I
but I
love
just
him
don't
so
respect him.
much. Like I would have said, I love him. He's just doing these things that are driving me nuts.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that, and I only ask that because I think that is so much the. I know for me that was my perspective too. Like, well, of course I love him. I just don't respect him, and I didn't have any appreciation for how similar those sound to him. Like, I don't love you and I don't respect you, sounding the same. And it sounds like you didn't either. No one showed you what respect looks like before. And you were even asking all around town, trying to find somebody who could help you fix that. And nobody could.
Well, actually my mom recommended your book to me. Um, so it's that double-edged sword of maybe you shouldn't talk to anybody and everybody, and maybe there's a woman who knows. There's that double-edged sword there, I guess.
Yeah. So, in other words, sharing about your disrespect for your husband um, felt kind of fruitless at first, and now looking back, you're like, "Oh, I'm glad I did that." Because is that fair to say? Because that's what led to.
Um, yeah, I have to say it's incredibly lonely and to tell other women, especially when the women around you are just divorced already. I mean, that that is so lonely. Or in my case, I had learned that I have actually two friends that talk to each other about everything and anything and anyone. And I had learned that I had been talked about, and through a group of friends, that it had made its sweet little way back to my husband.
Ooh, wow, wow. I hear you. So, I think what I hear you saying is, as lonely and desperate and hopeless as you felt, you needed something, and communicating about it with friends and family seems kind of logical. But in the end, it sounds like it left you feeling even lonelier and also unsafe because it became part of the rumor mill and hurt your husband.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Ouch.
as I said, we live next to my husband's childhood friends. So I mean, he's known the people in this neighborhood for 30 plus years, and the rumor mill is
It's
terrible.
working.
It's
So
terrible.
yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh gosh. So it sounds like yeah, I mean that just sounds scary, awful, kind of mortifying, right? To have it get back to him. Oof.
Mhm.
Wow. So, and how did he respond to that?
Well, it's two parts. So initially, how he responded to the disrespect when I said, I don't respect you anymore. I can just hear that in such the meanest, like, I don't respect you anymore. Like um he he sat down and he wrote up a list of I I don't I wouldn't title it the I would the I don't respect you either list
Ooh.
of, well, these are the things that you're doing that drive me crazy that I would like you to change list. like
Oof. Ouch.
um and that was really hard to look at, and it took me a long time to see the heart message in that.
Mm. What is the heart message in that?
I think the heart message was that he was hurt and he does care about me, and he wanted to protect me. I think, um, he and yeah, and it took me a long time to see that, because really by doing that, like, I just was looking at him going like, oh buddy, like, that's
Yeah.
ouch,
Yeah.
and that's controlling, and
I feel defensive and I feel hurt and I'm upset with you. And how does a list of 10 things I hate about you, how does that become a heart message that you can hear and actually appreciate about him?
um I think at first I just looked at it as all of the ways that I had been disrespectful towards him. And I had read your book about how to be respectful, and I really was looking at this list, just writing on hope that I could act respectful, and that if I did, that I would feel my husband's love again. Like, like it was just like pure faith, and then also just pure like, I am really upset about that right now, but I'm just gonna stick that on a back burner for now. Because I knew that if I lashed out and started defending all of my choices and my decisions, that would be like the wrong thing to do.
Erin, that takes so much courage and so much humility to not defend, right? To not react with all the hurt that you were feeling. And to, yeah, I just hear you brought a big listening ear, it sounds like. And then didn't react when the news came back, like, ow, 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 ow.
Like,
pretty impressive, right?
I guess I just I knew how much that I loved my husband. Like, I mean, I guess I like wrote on that. I'm like, I love you, and we're gonna ride on these flames. like,
wow,
yeah, yeah. It actually it took me probably about a year before I really was able to pull that list off the back burner and look at it, and for me, I actually tore it up, and I said, okay, like, I know what's on this list. I know why my husband put those things on there. And yes, in these specific ways, I was disrespectful. This one thing though, this one really big thing on this list, that's my paper. And my husband doesn't get to control that. I get to make choices. And in fact, I had a day where I was like, I'm going to go do these 5 things just to like reestablish that that's my choice, even though I didn't. But I had a moment of like, I'm going to go to the library and go look up, look up this newspaper that my husband hates. Like it was like really rebellious, right? I didn't, but
wanting to feel like you have autonomy, the most basic human need, I think, really, besides food and water and shelter, is wanting to feel autonomous. And so not wanting to feel like he's trying to control you, right? That's hurtful also. Yeah. Wow. Well, so, all right. So and at some point in here, you got a book. Your mom suggested a book. And what was the point where you thought, okay, I'm going to read that book?
This would have been probably like April of 2021, where I had yelled at my spouse, and then I had talked to people, and maybe about June, I had heard about your book, and then I ordered it. And I started to read it. And July was was kind of that, hey, Erin, here's the list.
Wow. List came right after. That's interesting timing, right? I guess.
Right.
I guess when you're having a breakdown, and sometimes that pain is what gets you to do something different. It sounds like it might have been.
Yeah. So I had been reading your book at that point, and I just, I guess, decided that I would stick with what I wanted. And I would, I did, I apologized, and I said, I can see I've really hurt you.
Wow.
And that I've been disrespectful. And I yelled at you, and that was terrible. It was terrible. And I want to stay married. And I really do want to grow old with my husband. Um,
Was divorce on the table at that point?
yes.
Scary. Yeah.
Yes. And I will say that it was my idea and that my husband had come back and said, I think you might be right.
Oh, oof. Scary. Scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you start to do differently once you got the book and read that?
I had apologized, and I think that was huge. And then I know that you don't recommend this, but I actually told my husband all about your book because I will read a book and then give my husband like the cliff notes.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
So it's funny because I'm like, oh, at the beginning of the July, we had discussed divorce. And at the end of that July, we were celebrating our wedding anniversary. Um, and the contrast was really hard for me because my husband, he came on like strong and then like he really like stop, go, like he planned this really big, beautiful anniversary getaway for us. And I showed up as, happy as my happy self. And I really, I tried to show up calm and not anxious. And for me, you describe that as duct tape. So you're like, hey, like, you don't need to bring your anxiety to the party. Like, just, be still, close your mouth, listen. um, um, and that was hard.
Yeah. It is hard. It can feel so offensive in some ways too, right? What do you mean close my mouth? Like, but you were open to it, it sounds like. So
It does. It sounds offensive because I'm over here like, but if you don't listen to me, does that mean you don't love me?
right. And I have a lot of things to say and I want to feel heard. And yeah, totally. Totally. But you just so you made this decision though that you were gonna be kind of quietish.
Mhm. That
Uh,
I would just show up and be grateful and as much as possible try to be present in the moment. Um, and the weekend was delightful. However, there was a moment where I was sitting on a ski lift. It was summer, middle of summer, so I'm on a ski lift and I was like in tears because because my husband had said something and it cut me and I was like and I just cried like there on the ski lift and I let him watch me. I didn't tell him I didn't berate him and we survived. I went into the bathroom, I washed my face, we went to dinner, and he, bless his heart, just continued to listen to me give him the additional spark notes about your book, cliff notes. Um, and he just looked at me from across the table with a smile on his face that um, I could tell that he was excited about what I was learning. And he told me that he was just happy that he wouldn't be criticized anymore. I think that was, yeah.
Sounds like a pretty rough anniversary, like a bittersweet, like a best of times, worst of times kind of anniversary.
Yeah. And then unfortunately, the friend rumor mill happened like in October of that year.
Oh,
And
like a little
he,
ticking time bomb went off
yes.
later.
And, he was really weird for a couple weeks where I was like, there's something that's bugging you, but you're not willing to bring it up. Um, and he did, to his credit, he did bring it up a few weeks later, but it really, for me, it really scared me. It made me feel just all of this anxiety. Like for me, it was like, oh, here I've made all of this progress. And then like, like this thing that I did 6 months ago, oops.
Yeah. Awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially, it sounds like you made some pretty Herculean efforts to show up differently. You issued that apology, and even this, crying on the ski lift, it sounds very vulnerable. You weren't defending. You were not saying everything that crossed your mind, regardless of whether it served the intimacy or not, right? You were being really judicious about what you were sharing, and you were excited and being studious about the intimacy skills and sharing those with him. And yeah, so I really hear what a good student of the skills you were, and it just probably felt really disappointing to have like the old Erin kind of came back and sabotaged some of that success you were enjoying at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Like really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Well, so you had read the book, and what other skills were you applying besides, and you've listed quite a few already, but what else were you doing that was different than what you had been doing before?
About that December, I had latched on to the idea of expressing a pure desire. Like just completely latched onto it. And I was like, I wonder what would happen if. And I just started thinking of like these really whimsical things. Like, I was like, I wonder what would happen if I asked for like a 4,000 piece Lego set for Christmas. Like, what would happen? And I did. I was like, and I felt like, like I'm a 30-plus-year-old woman. I felt like I needed to justify that. Like, I need one because, and I didn't, I want one. Like, how amazing would that be? um, and then I wanted to take a solo trip out of town. And I have never taken a solo trip by myself. I've gone on trips with like my siblings or out to visit my parents, but I've never gone all by myself. And I did just dream up like I want to go to these hot springs, and I'm going to drive 2.5 hours away. I'm going to stay in a hotel. I want to spend 2 nights. Like, I just started sharing like whimsical stuff. Like, like I didn't want to choose anything practical because like the practical was like, I want my dishes done and I want a nap, like,
Yeah.
But I wanted to choose things that were just delightful.
I love that. I love that you got in touch with this desire to go to the hot springs by a solo for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm. And actually that December, so this was December of 2021, I had expressed a desire to join your Ridiculously Happy Wives group. And I actually didn't express that desire to my husband because that felt like too vulnerable. Like, hey, like I realize I still have more work to do, but I had been talking to my mom, and she said to me, for Christmas, I would love to give you some money so that you can do that.
Oh, sweet. Nice. Wow. Well, I love that. So, okay, well, so when you expressed the desires for this hot springs trip, sounds like that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was his response? Like when you said that's what you wanted to do?
He was like, go for it. And also, he expressed a desire to take his own solo trip.
Wow. And how did that land for you?
For me, it was scary. Yeah. I was like, I think one of the hard things about I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband, owns his own business. And I think one of the hard things about being a stay-at-home parent is, for me, the expectation that like my husband should get off work and want to hang out with me and want to parent and take care of the kids and do the dishes. And which is funny, I keep bringing that up. I do the dishes at my house like
okay.
90% of the time.
This is where we part ways, Erin.
um so yeah, so for me that was like for me, I just had to kind of look at him and be like, you can do that, but right now, like, I can't like discuss that with you because that brings up all sorts of anger and indignation that like I don't know what to do with.
Well, I think this is very relatable. Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, I need a break from you and the kids, like from my job, basically, in a way, right? I need this solo trip. But why should you need a solo trip? Because you get to go to work. You get away from all this all the time anyway. So, and yet, of course, as you're saying it, also, it's like, okay, so it's slightly unfair. I want a solo trip, but I don't want you to have a solo trip. But I think it's also, I mean, I just think a lot of women can relate to feeling this, yeah, just to, like, no, I don't want you to go on a trip by yourself. So, and so is that how you responded? Like, I want to take my trip, but I don't want you to take your trip, kind of thing.
I actually, to my credit, I didn't say that. I was just kind of smiled at him and I was like, well, where would you go?
Wow, very good. Very good. So you never really knew that you weren't so excited about that idea.
Oh, I'm sure he knew. Unfortunately, my face is loud and I wear my emotions on my face. So I can't hide anything, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But you
so I did. I took that trip and it was delightful.
and did he take his trip also?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Wow. Okay. So and it was delightful. So you came back all, I mean, full feeling good. You're full tank from
Mhm.
that trip. Nice. Okay. So well, it sounds like you also kind of demonstrated to yourself that he really does want you to be happy.
Mhm.
And when did this affection start coming back? Because it sounds like it did.
It did. I think that trip for me, that was huge. I had gotten some coaching around that because I actually had complained to one of your coaches, hey, my husband wants to take a trip too. and,
I love it.
and I'm angry. Like, what do I
Yeah,
do about this?
right, right.
And she just really challenged me. She said, go enjoy yourself. Don't worry about your husband's upcoming trip. Like, go enjoy yourself. And then when you come home, she challenged me to bring my fun back. She said, show up at home with your fun, show up delighted. Um, and, I had taken this trip and it's funny because I struggle to sit and hang out by myself, but I probably need to sit and hang out with just myself. you know? And like while I was on the trip solo with myself, I called a lot of people. I had a lot of conversations. I stopped in and visited a family member who lives in that state, but I also was able to sit and um, write and watch a TV show that I love and all the things.
So you got a good combo of, I mean, I definitely heard a need for some solitude, right? That was part of the care and feeding of Erin for that at that time. That's what you wanted. But also you needed some girl talk and yeah, you needed to talk to other people that you love. And so you got both and you were able to come home full of fun, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And then did that change your perspective on his solo trip? Or were you still
Yes.
kind of annoyed? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Um, I think for me, seeing the benefits of self care has really given me more respect for his need for self-care.
Mm.
And for me, I see it as like a juggling act, like that there are all of these needs that we have. Like I have a need for solitude. I have a need to hang out with my girlfriends, and my sisters and my parents. And I have a need to hang out by myself solo. A real need actually to find calm and peace. Because I tend to show up in the world and bring all of my fears and anxiety. Like, hey world, like here's this pile of all the reasons we should be scared, And so I saw the need for us to spend time with just each other, and time for us to spend one-on-one with our boys, and time for us to spend as a whole family. And so, and his need to hang out with friends and to hang out with just his family on his own as well.
So are you saying that you got to the place where you felt like you could truly give him your blessing on his solo trip? Or was it still more like, okay, I'll just grin and bear it?
I could give him my blessing because I looked at it and I saw the need for him to do that. I saw how much joy that brought into my life. Like I drove in a car for 2.5 hours. I played Disney music and sang my heart out, like
I want to be where the people aren't. Right. Okay.
right. Oh, well, more like Frozen. Like,
oh, okay.
Frozen 1 and 2.
All right.
Which is funny because my kids are just right at that age, right below the age where everyone was obsessed with it. So it hasn't been ruined for me.
Oh, that's good.
And yeah, so I sang, music. When I got up there, I put my headphones on. I danced alone in my hotel room. Like.
And when you got back, you were able to be generous. You became your best Erin, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I was excited. I was excited to see my family again. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, like instead of coming from a place where I felt just like depleted and empty and so angry, because I think for me, when I don't get that solitude, like I just get angry.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. Absolutely. So what is your relationship like now?
Now I see that my husband, he really loves me, and his love language is as actually acts of service. Like he's so willing to do anything for me. And this sounds, with the exploring, with expressing the pure desire, like I almost have to be careful.
Careful what you wish for, because you're probably going to get it.
And one of my spouse fulfilling prophecies that I have had for a while is that my husband is generous. And I mean with his time, I mean with our family money, I mean like with his soul. Like he is giving. And he really wants me to be happy. Like when I first started saying that, I was like, I don't know about this, Laura. and now I'm like, yeah, actually, like that does ring true. And I learned from this that he's really sensitive to criticism.
Your big strong man gets
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I've been married now I'm going on my 12th year, and on our 11th, when he gave me that list, I mean, that was the moment where I was like, he's never done this before. He's never criticized me to my face before. And I'd seen that he had really refrained from pointing out my flaws. Like for me, I'm like, okay, like 11 years of marriage and you only have a list of 10, like that's
pretty good. That's like less than one a year, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this is like you wearing your new perspectacles where you say, actually, my husband has been generous with his kind of forgiveness, I guess, his tolerance, his accepting.
Yeah.
And that became of the focus instead of all the things that you were unhappy about.
Yeah. I think for me, this process has been really hard because it's brought up a lot of shame. um, um, because reading your book, I'm like, oh, like, why didn't I know this before? And now that you said it this way, like, this makes so much sense.
You're not the only one. Yeah.
I know. And then the other thing I saw and I do see about him is he, as I told you, he's not super expressive. Like he's not going to walk around being like, wow, Aaron, you're so amazing. But he,
he's like, oh, wait, I'm not giving up until we get all of it. Right. But yeah, okay, go ahead. All right.
And he communicates his gratitude just in a more roundabout way. Like instead of walking in the house and going like, wow, like you worked really hard, good job, he's, wow, like this looks really nice.
So he acknowledges your efforts, it sounds like, but maybe not the way you'd like to hear them.
Yeah. Not.
But you've opened your eyes a little wider, so now you can see that appreciation in a way that you couldn't before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I do want to share about that anniversary card because, be still my beating heart, right? And he wrote in it like, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world to be with you. Thank you so much for planning fun things to do with me and the boys.
Some appreciation there too.
Right? Yeah. And actually, going back to that, being careful what I wish for. In January, I went skiing with my whole family. And as part of that, I drove up the canyon with my sister's family. And someone threw up in the back seat, and we all played musical chairs. And I ended up in the driver's seat of a very big car. And for probably the past year, I really wanted a van. And after driving that specific car, I was so excited about it. Like, I couldn't stop gushing about how I had driven this really big car up the canyon and how I'd felt absolutely safe. And it was honestly one of the worst snow days of the year, too. So I'm driving this, someone else's car up the canyon on the worst snow day of the year. And I felt very safe. And when I talked to my husband about that and how safe I had felt, and I actually changed my desire from I want a van to I want this specific car. Yes. And like he like immediately started kind of looking at cars of that make and model, and he started getting really excited. And yeah, as I said, I have to be careful what I wish for, right? But last week we went and bought it.
Wow, you got your van.
Oh, actually, it's not a van. It's an SUV.
It's an SUV. Well, you got your SUV,
right?
Oh, because you'd wanted a van, but now it's an SUV. Wow, and you got the make and model that you wanted. It sounds like.
Yeah. And like for me, I think that was interesting. It was interesting because I was like, oh yeah, I do have this superpower, and
it can be scary.
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yeah.
You want to Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my husband's love language is he is giving. Like he wants to give us the things that we want and that we need. Like so yeah, it was a little scary and afterward I had some anxiety. And my husband sat down next to me and he's like, "Are you going to be okay?" And I was able to say, "Yes, I'm going to be okay." And he said, "I can tell you're really nervous." And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "Is it the car?" And I just had to kind of pull out my list of like, no, actually the car's it's going to be fine. I know that you've thought about it. I know that you've looked at can we afford this? I know we've spent
Yeah.
a lot of time thinking about it. Um, but yeah, like that's kind of scary to be like, wow, I have like power.
You do. I love it. You stretched into this. It feels like you had to stretch to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great story. I love that, Erin. Great job receiving so graciously and also getting your finger right on top of that desire, knowing what you want, being willing to express it. The whole thing can be kind of scary, can't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did a great job. I love that. Well, so what would you say to a woman who is where you were, where she feels like she's just cannot get his attention or his time, and she's feeling really heartbroken about it and lonely? And she wants what you have now, where she says she wants this brand of SUV and he buys that brand of SUV. And then afterwards says, okay, are you okay that, I got you this car, and kind of watches you squirm a little bit and maybe enjoys it. It sounds like, right? Like
Right,
there's this
right.
nice
I think
connecting
so.
moment. Yeah. Of him seeing that vulnerability, and where he writes in the card, I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky. What's your tip for her? What should she do?
I think I think there's a lot of power in leaning into that moment where you just sit there and you go, this isn't working. I need to do something different. And um, I wholeheartedly recommend your book to anyone who's having a hard time. I'm like, hey, read her book. She gets it. She's been there. It's hard for all of us. And I think what I would say to someone who's struggling is um, to check how you're showing up in the world. I mean, I was showing up with all of my anger and all of my fear and like a big bucket of sadness too, right? Like I was like, here are all of these uncomfortable emotions and um, kind of even the expectation that I had this expectation that my spouse would be able to like calm me down, and um, I realized that that's not fair to him. He has his own feelings and emotions, and he has to calm his own self down, right? Um, and so I had to reading your book helped me feel a little bit more uncomfortable in my own uncomfortable emotions
Mm.
because I didn't feel alone. I felt like, oh, other women experience this. And on top of that, like there are solutions, there are things that I can do that are um, more feminine and that aren't me sitting on the couch next to my husband going, hey, you did this thing and it really bothered me.
Yeah, it's true. I think there's this illusion that there's other couples having this kind of marriage that you in your head, right? At least I had this, like they're having this certain kind of marriage that is the appropriate kind of marriage for people to have. And we're just totally not having that. And it's because of you, husband. And it sounds like just having a glimpse, like, oh, it's not just me. That was some comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was some comfort. And then what I loved about your book is it was specifically like, hey, these 6 things, like the self-care, the respect, and I loved your list of how to be respectful. I thought I've read a lot of marriage books, and I admitted like, hey, like I read your book and then I also read like 500 bajillion others.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't read that many, but it felt like that many.
That's what I all did. Yeah. Where's the one that's going to make him do what I want? Right. That's what I was trying to find.
Well, I feel like the marriage books are always, they're like, don't do this. They're like, but they're never really like, but do this instead. And that's where I felt like you had really captured something important, which was, okay, so don't be disrespectful, but here's what respect would look like and what it would mean. And here's how, instead of bossing your husband around and throwing a hissy fit when you don't get what you want, here's how you could explain and express what your wants and your desires are. And I love how you put it, in a way that inspires, and I mean, it feels a little manipulative, right? Like, but I wasn't doing it to control my husband. I was sharing my desires because they were things that I wanted and that I thought would just be delightful to have,
And he sounds like he got pretty excited to hear about those desires. I mean, you ended up with a 4,000-piece Lego set out of expressing desire, right? Is that
right?
Not just the SUV. I mean, I think that could probably fall into the category of frivolous fun, right? The 4,000-piece Lego set, which I love. So I hear you. It sounds like it felt uncomfortable at first. I mean, I think it is vulnerable to express our desires. And it can feel like maybe it's a manipulation, but it's actually kind of just the opposite, I think, because we're being direct. This is what I would love, versus trying to get something through indirect means, which is what I think of as manipulation.
Yeah. You know what actually I loved about expressing my desires is, well, initially as I, expressed the desire to go on that solo trip, right? Like it gave my husband permission to express his desires.
Wow, so it changed the culture at your house.
Yes, and it's given my children permission to share their desires.
So everybody gets to dream at your house now.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds great. Well, this is an incredible transformation. How do you feel about, what's your level of respect for your husband now?
I respect him. I was telling a friend that if the option is to contradict my husband and get my way, that I would choose respect every time. Really? And I actually have a story to go with that.
Oh, let's hear. I want to hear.
We have a couple cats, and every once in a while, my cats will pee on things.
As cats will do, yes.
Right. And they had peed on a bean bag, with the styrofoam little beans inside that get everywhere, all over everything.
Oh, yeah. And forever. I think that's forever.
Right. Yeah, they take forever. So my son, he's 8, and he asked his dad what he could do to clean it out. And my husband, told him that of course he could take all of those beans out and put them in a bag, and then we could then wash the cover. And watching my 8-year-old explain this to me was really interesting, because
in your head you were thinking, no, don't do that.
Right. Okay. Right. And I had told him, I said, hey, buddy, I think the beans will get everywhere. I think that there's another way to do this. And,
Teens will totally get everywhere. Oh my God.
He's 8 and he's like, but dad said,
so that's great. Okay.
And my husband wasn't in the room while we were having this conversation. Otherwise,
you're just talking to your 8-year-old.
I'm talking to my 8-year-old and he's like, hey, dad says I could do this. And I was like, yeah. And it's funny because he's like, well, no, dad said. And I was like, I just decided to go with it. At that point, I was like, okay, like dad said you could do that. Like, have at it. Here's a pin. Figure out how to open that up and let's see what happens.
Wow, you just rolled right into it, even though you could see this impending disaster about to happen to your house. Okay.
Oh, so he's outside on our porch, and what month was this? This was January, so it's freezing outside, and it's like 8:00 at night. And he has this beanbag open. There is like the little styrofoam beads everywhere. Like they are trailing into the neighbor's yard. They are all over my porch. And my husband walked out and he just kind of looked at the 8-year-old and he's like, whoa, like that's making a really big mess. Like maybe that wasn't such a good idea. And, the 8-year-old got offended and went to his room, and the 6-year-old and I found a shop vac and we're outside with the shop vac vacuuming it. At 8 p.m. at night. I mean, I have neighbors with young kids that are probably trying to put their babies to sleep. And I'm like, sorry, neighborhood. Like,
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, here's our disaster on our porch. I snapped photos. I sent it to a couple friends. I have a neighbor who's reported that her son has those little styrofoam pieces in his shoe and he's bringing them into her house. Like,
great. Yeah. You're popular.
But I guess I just saw that as maybe an opportunity, one, for my child to learn that, hey, there are these little styrofoam beads in this bean bag. And then also two, like, okay, dad said you could do that. Then like, go for it.
I'm going to respect your father's thinking. That is the act of respect. And also, so I kind of hear your piece about both your son, your 8-year-old son, and your husband getting, your husband got life lessons instead of wife lessons, and your son got life lessons instead of mom lessons, which they kind of stick better, right? Those lessons. Is that?
Yes. And then actually, I mean, I couldn't help myself because later that night when we crawled into bed, I was like, hey, you know that styrofoam beanbag thing? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I knew that would happen.
Oh, so you got to have that. Okay, that's good.
Language meeting. I actually started with I have a confession.
And I have a confession. Like, I love it. You got to confess.
And
what did he say about it?
He sent me a Weird Al video. You know Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh yeah.
There's this video titled I Have a Confession that he does.
Oh, okay.
So my husband actually sent that to me. So like choosing to respect my husband has actually allowed space for like playfulness in my home.
So instead of being tense, or you saying, I knew that was going to happen, right? Which would be kind of unappealing. This actually sparked a kind of a playful, fun exchange between the two of you, it sounds like.
Yeah, like, so the way I had phrased it was, hey, Cedric, my son wanted, to open up this beanbag, and I told him what would happen, and he did it anyway. So I guess I kind of was like, how amusing, like, for him to learn that these beanbags have a millions of little tiny styrofoam balls that get everywhere. Like,
yeah. And instead of being all resentful that you're out there on the porch with the shop vac waking up all the babies in the neighborhood, you just kind of rolled with it. You were like, this is a small thing. We don't have to sweat small things here. Is that right?
Yeah. And actually, it was me and my youngest sibling, youngest son, who ended up cleaning that up. And that was a party too, because the youngest was very much like, I am the world's best vacuumer.
So this is seriously a girl of fun and light right here. You were having a blast, even though the worst possible thing happened. What you foresaw happened, and it was kind of fun.
Yes. And
it.
I have neighbors who are like, I cannot believe you did that.
I know, right? Well, how do you think it's affected your kids that you have these intimacy skills and you practice them now?
I think they see my husband and I respect each other, and they see that if mom says no, then dad will respect mom said no. If dad says no, honestly, they try and play us off each other. Like, can I watch a movie? And so they watch us kind of go, well, what does dad say? Or what does mom say? Or we even actually have some rules around that, which is whoever is putting the kids to bed that night, they get to decide. And so I can see that they can look at us and see that we respect each other.
Yeah, there's a united front there. Yeah.
The other thing is they can look at us and see that we have desires and dreams and hopes, and we get to dream. Like, you know, if we couldn't afford a big new car right now, like we wouldn't have bought one. But that wouldn't have stopped us from dreaming about all of the amazing things about having a bigger car, which are like, we can pick up 3 friends and bring them home with us. We can go on neat trips and fit all of the camping gear in the back, you know?
I love that. So your family has visions like and dreams of what you want to create. And the whole family's in on that, it sounds like. Love that. So what would you say to Erin if you could go back in time? Tell her what you know now.
I would tell her to, one, give herself permission to feel all of her feelings. And 2, I would tell her that she's not going to feel the really sad, lonely way she feels for forever. And then I would tell her that I think one of the interesting questions that you've asked is not, the moment where you thought we can't go on like this. And I would tell her that she is going to have a lot of small moments like that where she goes, this thing that we're doing, this fight that we're having that we've had a million times, like we cannot keep having this fight. And that those moments, they will come. And I firmly, from where I'm sitting right now, I believe they will continue to come for the rest of my life, where I will find myself in a moment where I'm like feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed about my behavior, and I'll just be able to look at it as a learning opportunity and a growth opportunity instead of like a judgment opportunity where I'm
that was wise, Erin. I love that. Wow. Yeah, this is a growth opportunity, not a judgment opportunity. Wow. Let's talk about staying on your own paper.
And like for me, I think I would tell her, like, learn what respect is, like memorize like, and I haven't even done that yet. I know like generally what's on that list, but I'm like, memorize that list. Like if you have to choose between I would choose respect every time.
Clean up little piece of beanbag.
Yeah, like choose the respect because your spouse, they're a person, they're a human too, and they deserve your love and respect. And I so much want to be respected and loved and cherished and admired. And it's funny to look back and go like, whew, man, like I was expecting my husband to be all of those things when I wasn't showing up that way. Like,
you're so accountable, Erin. I mean, I love that. And it's taken you a long, long way, because this is an impressive transformation that you have from saying, I don't respect you, and not feeling like you had what it took to even show up for your family because you were feeling so hurt, and having a lot of, we can't go on like this moments to, just like saying, I have a confession. I knew that would happen, right? Having this playfulness and getting your dream car, and really creating a family that gets to dream together. So it's very beautiful. So inspired by all your courage and your commitment, all that you put into learning all this so that you could create this kind of family. Well done.
Oh, thank you. I'm like, I'm sold on these skills for life.
Yeah, right?
Right. Yeah.
What other way is there to be? I love that quote from, his name escapes me right now. The guy that saved England and therefore the free world during World War II. He said, the mind once stretched by a new idea never regains its original dimensions. Do you know his name? Prime Minister? Gosh, I should know.
Is that Winston Churchill?
Thank you, Winston Churchill. So anyway, but Erin, you did a great job sharing your story today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share the top 5 signs your marriage won't last. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is, if I say I'm going to be ready in 15 minutes, there is no need to remind me every half hour.